Welcome to KCRW's Behind the Screens. I am here with the director and star of the new film Charm City Kings. The director is Angel Manuel Soto, and the star has the best name of any actor I've ever been around, Jahi Di'Allo Winston. Hey, y'all. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
My pleasure. Let me start with you, Angel, because one of the things that really impresses me about the movie is the way you use sunlight. And sunlight is actually really a character in the film that, first of all, it kind of takes me back to the documentary, 12 O'Clock Boys, but it's also about sort of innocence and hope. I want you to talk about that a little bit because it's really like a visual motif.
It is a visual motif. The story takes place during one summer, and we really wanted to capture that sense of freedom and and the youth, and just going back to my childhood, also in Puerto Rico during those summers, the hot, bright sun, the harsh uh, contrast light, and everything just feels very possible. Doesn't matter how poor you are, and everything feels like we were just kids having fun. And as the movie keeps progressing, you start noticing how the earlier parts of that coming of age journey of Mouse is geared a little bit more into um, the lightness of it all. And when the bike gets stolen and everything starts going south, we start noticing that we starting heading into a more darker tones, and it starts just getting a little bit more overcast as it goes through the length of the ends of the film. And then we meet at the end. It was serendipitous, and I'm so glad we had it. The last moment we see it a year later, it's raining. So it's kind of like for me, the whole process of using light, using texture, using the weather, I think it speaks a lot about the emotional connections and the emotional journey that each character has, not only between each other, but with the film in general.
I was also thinking about that too, because the very beginning of the film, when we meet Mouse's brother Stro, it's dark and overcast too, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you see, like we wanted to use that to our advantage in telling the story. Use it in a subtle way that it just feels right with the environment and the atmosphere that this friendship really has at the beginning. It's on those moments that you see the emotional thing as it keeps going throughout the film. Those emotional peaks are hit a lot with not just the score from Alex Summers, but also in general the motif of lighting.
Very much so. And Jai, I want to ask you, what did you think of Mouse when you first read the script? What were your thoughts about the character?
Well, I really loved how, just from a story perspective, how we were sort of seeing this world and experiencing this world through his eyes. Him being this minuscule 14-year-old boy, and us really getting to experience this mountainous world through his eyes, and him being at the center of it. I loved the dynamic between him and his friends, and I love the idea of being able to add an element of layer to an element of humanity, to the troubled black teen trope. I think that has sort of existed in Hollywood, and sort of trying to add an element of humanity and add an element of empathy and context with where that's concerned, and systemic context that come into play there. But just trying to tap into his humanity, and I enjoyed the simplicity of the story and how it was structured and crafted. Those are the things that stuck out to me.
I guess I want to ask you too, because like Mouse's physical presence is different with Blax than it is with Rivers, but he's obviously desperately a guy who's so obviously he's so desperately looking for a big brother. I want to ask you how you kind of figured that out, how because he gets really, really close to Blax, but he's always kind of separated from Rivers, is like he doesn't want to get physically too close to him. I just want to have you talk about that a little bit, because I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, well, I think his want and his desire for a big brother figure in his life is evident in his behavior, in the spaces that he takes up. And it's great that you pointed that out, because Blax is more like the big brother, whereas Rivers is the sort of father figure. And my job as an actor is to sort of focus on character and look beyond the script to sort of fill in those blanks that the script doesn't necessarily touch on, because it's a 2-hour film. You know, we have a lot to do. But and it was evident. It was interesting because Rivers sort of served as the father figure, and Black sort of served as the big brother. So it led me to believe that because Mouse sort of deterred from Rivers and latched on to Blacks, it lends itself to what you said. He was sort of deterring away from a father figure, but he was really trying to fill the hole of having Stro being out of his life. And it also led me to believe that maybe his relationship with his father wasn't as good or as strong, and maybe he didn't have as much of a, he wasn't really desiring or needing a father figure in his life because of who his father was, which we never touch on in the film. And I'm glad we don't, because I like that we're sort of dismantling that absentee Black father by having 2 Black mentors in the film and taking space in the film. So I think all of the things that you said are right on, and that was definitely something that I thought about when trying to craft Mouse and how I wanted to portray him.
I'm guessing one of the things you responded to as an actor is just that you, like you're saying, you got to sort of do a lot of that work because the script doesn't over-explain. We got to sort of see from the way that Mouse relates to his friends and everybody around him what he wants from them.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that another thing that I wanted to do, just being a part of this, was to sort of have an element of glee and levity throughout the film. And I definitely have to credit Kazai and Danielle, who played Lamont and Swear to God, for that, because we had that on and off screen. And I think the 3 of us sort of had an understanding, as well as Anel and all of us, that if that chemistry is not intact, if that doesn't work, then the film doesn't work, because they are the heart of the film. And so for me, actually, when it was solidified that this was something that I wanted to be a part of, was the chemistry read when I met the 2 of them, because I didn't know them, but when we got in the room, it was really magical how it happened, and we all sort of just clicked right away, innately and immediately. And I think we all sort of left that room and knew that we had something special, and it would be great to sort of get together with them again. And we ended up doing the film in West Baltimore for what, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that. But yeah, I have to credit them for that as well, just bringing the levity out of me, because I mean, it was a very high maintenance environment filming, and it was stressful for me because this was the most I've ever had to film, and the emotional depth in which I had to sort of tap into was difficult. And so they definitely brought that out of me throughout the period of filming.
I'm glad you brought these things up, because Angela gives me a chance to ask a question I wanted to ask, which was casting somebody who we had to understand was smart, but he couldn't tell us. I mean, we get to see like the way he deals with an animal birth at the very beginning, you know, that he's actually a really sort of, he's got a big heart, he's a smart guy, but he's never telling anybody how smart he is. So talk about the first time you saw Jahi and talked to him, and what made, and then that casting decision.
Yeah, I mean, well, definitely we spent a lot of time looking for Mouse. We did like the whole, with the casting director of The Wire, I believe, in Baltimore. We did the whole Baltimore search. We did the whole nationwide search. And as we were like picking our selections, I really wanted to focus on being able to capture the soul of Mouse. And that goes on for me, at least it makes it easier for me to interact with an actor when their resting face or their eyes, you know, as a window to their soul, already give me 50% of what I want to say. I think like that, for me personally, helps me with subtext when I already have that layer of backstory told just with a stare or a smile. And with those things, I'm like, okay, this is good. But the other part that I felt like was really important was the chemistry. And we called a couple of kids over, and you know, all of them were super talented. They all brought something different to Mouse. Kids from Baltimore, from all over America. But it was when I saw Jahi interacting with Danielle and Kasai, and we were there sitting and we saw that whole thing happen before our eyes. We looked at each other as like, they were joking and they were doing like, I don't know, they had already their inside jokes as if they knew each other for years. And within that whole gesture, we were like, okay, on that energy, let's start. do the scene. And they were like, okay. And with that whole same banter, they started like just feeding off each other, bullying each other, having fun. And it was just, okay, this is it. We found them. And we still had other meetings to do and everything that we were like, okay, we'll give everybody a chance. But I think we saw it play before our eyes. And that chemistry, which I think is the heart of the film as well. Like, yes, the soul of Jahi is important. And he is an empath. Like he is an empath as a human being. And when we met, what were you, 13, 14 years old?
Mm-hmm.
He was like 13 going to 40. And I'm like, this kid is super smart. He knows more about social justice topics that I thought I knew. And I'm like, oh my God, this kid is on top of things. He's teaching me all the way. But the stuff that he didn't know or that he hasn't experienced, he was very open into really trying to put himself in those shoes. And we had a moment where we were talking about loss. And the film deals with a lot of loss and something that I'm very familiar with, sadly. And the characters of like Sort of God and Lamont are also very, I saw those kids play out the same way they did in the movie before. And being able to see Jahi embody that sentiment in such a profound way without saying what, like you said, without saying what I'm going through. You see it right there. That level of authenticity to emotion is really hard to find. And I found it in Jahi.
First of all, what you were talking about, Angel, basically with the kids, they all have these sort of big brimming eyes that tell us a lot. It's really the difference between the kids and the adults. The adults kind of have all these sort of heavy lidded eyes that don't let anything in, and the kids are taking everything in. And I wanted to have you talk about that a little bit too, because it's kind of amazing.
Well, it's that whole thing of the spark in the eyes, like the innocence and really the fact that their purity hasn't been stained by the realities of life. I feel like it's a very powerful thing to see play out, and it's a very hard thing to go back to when that light turns off. Like, I think like there's a turning point in every adolescent's life where you have to be like what happened to Miles. Like, it's when he had to become a man or grow up too early, go through experiences that involve a different paradigm of life, you kind of like, you lose a little bit of that shine, right? Or that sparkle in your eyes that is really inherent to Mouse and the kids, especially when their innocence gets corrupted halfway in the film. So being able to protect that and let just that scene, I believe, I don't remember very well, but I think that scene might have had a couple of lines from Mouse. I was like, man, just hold them. Like, think you're gonna say them and just don't.
right.
Until they just like, because I've been there. Like, I remember being like, that scene for me was the most personal one because it reminded me a lot of that moment in my time in my life when my mom went through that same shit. And for me, it was sort of like, that was when you really feel that whole pressure that you have been kind of like fed since you were little. Now you have to step it up. Stop stop being a child, grow up. You need to provide. And you're just a kid. And that's exactly what happened to Miles. That was the moment after seeing everything that went through. That was the moment that he's like, you know what? We need to go get it. We need to go get it. And that definitely shows down the sparkle in the eyes. But I don't know if you noticed, I know Jahi spoke about something that's really interesting regarding the absence of the father. But because
the mug. I definitely know it's a mug. Yes.
Yeah.
It's like it's in so many ways, this film is kind of it's weird, kind of procedural, and lots of information we never really get. I don't want to tell people too much, but there's mysteries about his brother, mysteries about the father, mysteries about where Blax came from, what he did. I mean, it feels like what you guys were doing, and you can speak this a little bit, Angel, is saying, let's not give too much away. Let's let people live with the movie rather than being told what's happening in it.
Correct. Yeah, that I think like I like to have questions. I like to a lot of the things I create, it comes from a place of trying to see questions being played out. And sometimes we don't really have all the information literally on your face that informs, but you can feel people. And I think that part of creating this empathy to the characters almost relies more on me wanting to care for this person that I met today, as opposed to, well, tell me your story and maybe I care. So it's kind of like, it feel like that whole journey and experience we wanted really to carry on this one summer with our friends. We're gonna give you the information you need to know as the story progresses, because the subtext and the morals of the story at the end of the day are really the ones that we want to hammer on. Like we always said, it's a simple story about a kid who wants a bike during one summer and things go south. And coming of age drama that turns into a crime saga. Great. We get the tropes. We know how it's gonna be. What do we want to say? What does need to be said? And what do we want to say about ourselves in a movie that kind of like almost feels like that genre would have been hold to a different demographic? And how can we own that demographic and tell our stories? Like Jahi says something really interesting in a couple interviews, how not every time we have to be measured or look through the lens of your struggle. Like your struggle forms you, and the struggles, yeah, you fight it, but you are not just struggles. You're also a story of hope. You're also a message of what can we do to make things better by showing how toxic masculinity affects the decision of young men without making it about that. And I think that allowed us to be able to tap on those moments.
God, there's so much to chop up here, because what you're talking about here again too is what really works in the film. What makes it really interesting to me is that everything's that's happening in the moment, which means people aren't telling you what they're thinking, what they're feeling. And I want to ask you, Jahi, if that as an actor really excited you, that you could actually express what he's going through in different ways rather than dialogue, if you liked that idea, because it was a real test for you.
Absolutely. That's always what I look for in any character or breakdown that I comes over. Because I mean, if we comparatively, if we look at how we interact in real life, very rarely do people say how they actually feel. And that's something for me when I'm reading a script, that's how I know if it's bad, when someone says, this is how I feel and this is what my therapist said I should say because this is how I feel. If instead of just doing it, Shonda Rhimes always says like um a character should make things happen. Things should make sure things don't happen to the character. Like make sure your characters doing all the things that they think and feel and say, because our behavior and our experiences influence and our how we think and what we've been through influences our behavior and influences our everyday experiences and interactions. So I mean, absolutely, that was something that was very attractive and appealing about the script. The fact that Mouse never really says what's wrong with him and why he doesn't like rivers and why
Mm-hmm.
he just it's all the things that we've talked about up to this point in the interview. It could be that he didn't have a good relationship with his father. It could be that he never knew his father. It could be that while Stro was alive, he idolized him, yeah, but he never really felt like he could live up to him during Stro's life and after Stro had passed on. There are a lot of things that could be unpacked if we're talking about the story beyond the script, and how those things are in um, comparison to real life. But I think that what Angel said, this specific story that we're telling is about a boy who just wants a bike and um, how he's vehemently passionate about this world and about this culture, and how his passion for it sort of leads him down this tumultuous road that sort of causes him to make decisions that he can't retract or take back.
I'm sorry, I know, no disrespect, I mispronounced your name.
Oh, it's all good, man.
No, I should have done this before we got started. Watch this. I'll just keep moving on, because I think what's really fascinating about this too, again, because you guys are both talking about tropes, and there are tropes in Black drama, there are tropes in Black coming of age films, where we're constantly being told what has just happened. And for me, the art of this film is about the taking away, because you set up things that we expect to get answers, and they never get answers. You go, wait, oh. But again, that's how life is in the moment. I wondered if that was really kind of a strategy for you too, to try to tell the story in the most visual terms possible, rather than being so much about on-the-nose dialogue.
100%. I think I personally, I know there's moments that you have to give something, but like yeah, he said, we really don't. I mean, I still struggle with the fact, like, for me to tell you that I'm not doing okay, I don't know, my pride and my former machismo that has been invested
You're
on
not
me
doing
that I'm
okay. What's
trying to.
wrong, man? How can I help you? Come on, brother.
But
Help
you know
me
what I mean,
help
like
you.
it's kind of like, I don't want to denounce. Okay, so I we want to denounce the toxic masculinity, but we don't want to denounce it in the movie. So how do we show the
Right.
effects of it
Mm-hmm.
and see the repercussions of that decision, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to like, well, that happens, so you should have, like, we. I think we don't say much, but we show more than what we are supposed to say, and that's the beauty of being able to keep the humanity on the dialogues, keep the intentions and the idiosyncrasies, and maybe the lingo and the specific words that ground us in that place in time. But for example, even behind the joking around and the banter, there is a layer of them that's manifesting without being on the nose.
Well,
And I think that, sorry, yeah.
there's one scene that really gives it away, what's worth watching the movie for, where there's a young woman that Mouse has been after, and she comes over to him after he suddenly sort of raised his status in the neighborhood a little bit, and the way he sort of plays her off, and but
Yeah,
nothing is spoken, but that scene really sort of like is a kind of this festering boil of toxic masculinity,
exactly.
egged on by his boys, and even the girls, have, unfortunately, have been kind of
Hmm.
located in all this. I mean, that's such a great scene.
And you see that scene, and the reaction is like, "Man, Mouse, you shouldn't be doing that."
Right.
And and exactly, that's the reaction you want from that scene. Like, maybe he doesn't, he didn't, nobody told him there, but us as an audience feel like, "Yo, man, you did her wrong." Like that, and exactly, that's the conversations, as opposed to making it a, this is the moral of this scene, let's let it play out the way it really plays out and show it with the light of what we're trying to say, as opposed to have them voice it.
Yeah, Jai, talk about playing the scene a little bit because that's also when we realize that Mouse is kind of lost when he does
Mm-hmm.
that. He's not the guy he was at the beginning of the movie, is he?
He's not, no.
No, he is. He's definitely not. I think he's who he always wanted to be, though, which is the sad part. Is
Wow.
we don't like him in that moment, but that's who he's always wanted to be. Because, like you said, that's what he was taught is supposed to be, is what he is, who he is supposed to be. So, again, it's us tackling and dismantling those ideas of toxic masculinity without actually making it about that. I mean, I think if Angel wanted to make a movie about toxic masculinity, we probably would have done a documentary about toxic masculinity. But we were telling a story. That scene was fun to do just because I mean I like to. It was fun because I like to sort of. I can't stand toxic or just hyper masculinity. Like the dudes that like won't actually eat a banana. They'll like break it and then just eat it out of their hand, which is so dumb to me. It's like fruit. It's food. Just eat it. How it's supposed to be eaten. I don't get it, but and so I kind of like making fun of that through my work, and I sort of like so that was fun to do to sort of be a jerk and behave how I would never behave in real life, and sort of just have that braggadocious energy and have the support of my friends who are also exhibiting the same toxic, horrible behavior.
I asked you before we got started, so you had a chance to think about how evasive you want to be with this, Jahi. what, what kind of things did Meek say to you? I mean, given the life that he's lived. Oh, look at this. Even Not Hell likes this. Everybody likes watching you squirm. Show us you're better than that. What do you got?
Um, Here's the thing that's like sort of surprising to I guess some people. I didn't get to spend a whole lot of time, definitely not as much time as I would have liked to with me because he's a superstar and he has an incredible work ethic to his credit. So he was working on his album and he was doing shows and he was doing the movie all at the same time. So whenever he was done, like he was done because he had to go back to the studio or go to do a show. And sometimes he would get there tired because he had just come back from a show or whatever. But what advice did he give me? I will say I enjoyed talking with Meek. I enjoyed getting to see who he is aside from the, I used to pray for times like this, the rounds like this, so I had to grind like that. Outside of his rap persona. And he's actually kind of a shy guy. I think he is very quiet and to himself. But I think getting to talk to him and getting to know him for the short amount of time that I did, he has a genuine heart, and he really wanted for this to be great, and I think that was the dope thing about it, is because you can tell he didn't want to look like a rapper acting, because every time we called, or Angel called cut, he would be like, how's that? You know what I'm saying? Let me see it. I got to see it. You know what I'm saying? And he would always watch playback, which is an interesting thing, because juxtaposition to me, I never watch playback because
Really?
no, every time I watch I really think playback is like death to the actor and all those things. Like, I mean, it's just I'm always like, I blink too much, and you really start to get self-conscious about those things. And so I try not to watch playback, but he would always watch playback, because he would always be like, I have to, like, he's the kind of person, like, I have to see it to make sure that it's what I have to do, or I'm doing what I should be doing, or if I like it. And so we would always take the time to, for him to be able to see it, and for him to get what he needed as a performer, and he would always deliver. I've been talking about a moment towards the end of shooting, where we filmed the scene right before. Are people watching this? Have they seen the movie? I mean, it's out, but at the end of the film, where Blax sort of makes a big decision for Mouse, and Meek or Blax gives this big speech, we don't get second chances and all these things, and that was really the first time that I saw it click with, or really felt it, like I did in that moment when he was giving me that speech. I was like, oh, I forgot my line. Like, he's so good. Like,
Because you say that line almost sounds like, basically, it could have been a line for one of his songs, actually.
Absolutely. And that's why I think this was such a perfect medium in a role for him to take, is because he's not playing Meek Mill, but it's not far away from him where it's like, I know nothing about this, and it's not too detached where it's like, this is not anything that I can connect to on a personal level. Like, Meek knows Mouse, he knows real life Mouses, he knows real life Blaxes and Stros and the mothers who just want the best for their child, for the best for their children. So working with Meek was great. I had a lot of fun. He's definitely a great actor, and I look forward to what he does in the acting realm after this movie comes out. I think he really impressed a lot of people with this role.
We should go to some of the audience questions here, because nobody cares what I have to say. What was it like to film this movie in the city it's based in? Do you have any memorable moments with locals?
Here you go.
Okay, I was gonna wait for Angel. Every day was memorable. I think I always say something happened every single day, and that was the fun part, and also the kind of stressful part about filming in Baltimore. That something happened every day. I mean, we can tell a bunch of stories about. Like I said, Baltimore was a character on and off screen. So, yeah, we have a lot of stories about interactions with locals. Like, Baltimoreans, they're very proud of their culture. So, they'll walk right through the shot. They don't care. They don't care about your movie. It's like, this is my street. This is my block. Y'all are guests. And so, but I know it can speak more to that.
Definitely, there were a lot of that. The bogies. I mean, this is the street, so we really had to shoot around their time. But in and of it all, I felt like the community was not just proud and happy, but they also got involved, and we had not only people from wherever area we were shooting as part of the team over there, either were extras or even on the production side, but even from the 12 o'clock boys, we had a lot of them actually take place, and being able to see them on their element and being able to see them being free and showing the whole world what they're all about. Like, they're often being criminalized and vilified, and there's like laws that target them specifically, and all the money is invested in putting them in prison, not in building them a strip to ride. And being able to see them for the first time, instead of being persecuted by the police, being escorted by the same police that persecutes them, escorting them to set. They were like, "That's what's up.
Yeah.
Now you guys work for us."
Yeah.
And having them actually like feel so much pride on their art, for me, that made the whole thing possible. And you know, if I want to say like a special mention, it would be Marvin Brahim. Marvin Brahim, he plays Derek, the guy who steals Miles' bike. He's not an actor. He's a 12 o'clock boy. He started with the 12 o'clock boys when he was a kid. He went to set every morning just because it's his neighborhood. We gave them a PA security job right away because he knows everybody, so he's willing to help and speak. And then the third week, we were going to shoot that scene, and the actor that we have from Baltimore, great actor, we gave him another role. He couldn't ride a bike, so we needed somebody who could steal the bike and ride, and hopefully do a trick. So we knew that he could ride. Here, he at the end of the movie, you see the guy with the face mask that grabs the phone and boy
That's
popping a
Marv.
wheelie. That's him. So when we saw that video, we were, and that happened in the first week of shooting, where it was like, well, Marvin can act. We should get him. So Caleb, when we did the whole thing and we told him, so you can ride. Yes, I can ride. Can you act? And he's like, nope, I cannot act. So he's like, okay, well, tomorrow is going to be your first day. So we went, we worked it out. He delivered, he stole the bike. And then we had the 3 weeks until the beating scene. And that beating scene, he spent those 3 weeks with acting coach Louis Armstrong, and Kevin Rogers, who is the stunt coordinator, and he was able to nail that scene perfectly from somebody who has never acted in front of the camera before and do his own stunts. And for me, like that whole thing of like, those are the two main memories I can take from the experience in Baltimore with the people in the community in Baltimore that really stayed with me.
You know, in 10 years, 12 Cup boys will be an Olympic sport, so this will all be forgotten.
I hope so.
It'll be like snowboarding.
Yeah, it's like snowboarding, like skateboarding, even murals. Murals were vandalism back in the day. Now people are paying millions of dollars.
Used to do is now you can make money off of. Anyway,
exactly.
Next question. I'm sorry, Angel, this is not for you. Jahi, you were fantastic as Mouse, and we can't wait to see your career continue to unfold. What's next for you, besides the Meek Mill story? That's me. I threw that one
in. What's next for me? Well, I did a film last year in Nashville called The Violent Heart. And that stars Giovanna Depo, who was recently nominated for an Emmy for his role in Watchmen. It stars Giovanna Depo, Grace Van Patten, Mary J. Blige, Cress Williams. And it's directed by Karim Sanga, who's a very popular indie director. And we did that in Nashville, and that one centers around a lot of family themes, and it's sort of a mysterious genre piece. And I really had a lot of fun doing that. And aside from that, right now I'm just trying to, pass physics and graduate and finish my senior year of high school without, going crazy.
I'm sorry. Yes, remind us how precocious you are. I'm sorry, I forgot. Right, like you were. So question here, although I think you can answer this pretty simply, and it's for you, Jahi. Did you enjoy riding the bike as much as Moss? Did you actually ride the bike?
Absolutely not.
I didn't think so.
No. So I mean, I would have. Okay, so I have no problem not riding the two-wheeler because I don't want to fall and bust my behind. But I riding the four-wheeler would have been cool. Like getting to ride the four-wheeler, something that's a little bit more stable. You know what I'm saying? That would have been cool. But no, I didn't ride at all.
Because I figure insurance issues.
Mm-hmm.
You leave that to Derek so he can get beat up, and that way, if he's beat up, it's okay. He's supposed to look like that at the end of the movie. There's another question for both of you, I guess. Was there anything specific about the Baltimore bike culture that figured into how you were able to communicate the themes of the movie?
Yeah, I think there is an element of community and pride that goes beyond just the Baltimore flag and or a team. I think that the way the community comes together to see this artist perform in the streets, it's something that that we really wanted to capture. I think one of the we really wanted to, yes, there's like a gang involvement around the whole bike thing just because it's enthralling and it's exciting, but what you see on the right, what we replicated there is exactly how it almost happens, to the point that we where they usually do it, it's at a corner where you have like a BP station, you have a chicken, hip hop chicken,
Mhm.
and they do it over there. But it's like it's a really busy street, so we couldn't shoot it right there. So we found a less busy street that we could control better with the logouts, and we were able to find a BP station, and across from it, an abandoned building that we turned into a hip hop chicken, and creating that level of like this almost looks exactly like where they do it, and having them do their thing in a safe space, allowed to capture everything you see in that moment of the Sunday rides is exciting. All the excitement is not like now people laugh and be happy. No, no, people are actually really enjoying the show. And that level of community there is the things that you don't talk that the media doesn't talk about when talking about Baltimore. And I think that for me, we really wanted to capture that element of the bike culture, which is about niceness. It's about uh, being there, just enjoying the moment and feeling free. That sense of freedom while riding, even though it could be easily distorted, uh, at its core, that's what they are. So for me, that definitely was very important. Transition from the bike culture to the film.
Let me ask you a quick question here, Jahi. Kind of a last question for you before we run out of time. In your last scene, without giving too much away, your physical posture really changes. Miles is a different guy in that last scene in the movie. I want to
Mhm.
talk to you, or ask you rather, about how you found that center, because we can see how much he's lived
Mhm.
in that moment. And first of all, when you guys shot that, and how you found that kind of emotional space.
Well, it was helpful. The timing was helpful because it really was almost a year later, from when we shot the movie. We did that during additional photography. So that was helpful. And also Didi, Danielle, who plays Lamont, that final moment between us where we embraced, he was helpful too because he had sort of, as a person, he had grown up too. Like he had, he was just talking about, I just came from Puerto Rico, and he was talking about all of his experiences. So him as a person sort of helped me because it's like, okay, this is sort of like Dini's grown up when we were in 14 filming the movie, what, last fall. And so that was helpful as well. But also just the keeping in mind that this was a he was, like you said, a different person. And at that point I had done, I think, two films since we wrapped. In that November I had done a film that came out last year called Queen and Slim, and I had done The Violent Heart, which is the film that I was just talking about. So I did those two, and then I went straight back to Baltimore to do additional photography. So I had sort of experienced other mediums and other things like that that sort of helped inform the context of, they are two completely different people now. And also, just my last point, where Mouse's posture is when he's embracing his mom at the very end when he comes back home was really important to me. I wanted them to end up on like the floor, like he's cradling him because he's like so weak or whatever. But it didn't need that. I feel like that would have been too much. But um, that and the symbolism behind when Mouse rides his bike one way and Lamont goes the other way, and how that's sort of symbolic for the fact that they went down two separate paths, and Lamont was built for one and Mouse wasn't built for one, and um, all of that informed those final beats. And so I think the timing was the best factor, the most vital character in all of this. And that helped inform my performance, and the performance of everyone on and off screen.
There's one last Q&A question that's for you, Angel, so it's a perfect way to end. What's next for you?
What's next for me? Oh wow! So yeah, hopefully more movies when everything opens up. But at the moment, this quarantine has forced me to write as much as I can. So I've been developing a couple of scripts, a couple stories, trying to get a couple projects sold that I already had developed. So we're doing that whole Zoom pitching during the quarantine and actually as during this whole week and next week. And hopefully something lands sooner rather than later. I'm dying to be back on set and elevate stories that speak about our experience, that speak about the Black and brown experience, not only in America, but it also wherever around the world. I think we need more representation, not in front of behind the camera, but also in our stories. I think we bring something to the table that is it's definitely a new light. I think is more than a new light, is it kind of like shakes the core of what we are used to consume. And I think changing our diet is a good thing, both physically but also creatively. And if we can do that, if we can change the palette of the audience and start feeling like, oh shit, I enjoy this movie even though that's not my culture, or hey, I don't mind reading subtitles. This is an amazing story. Like, bring maybe this makes us this quarantine and everything in between makes us more human. And I think that gaining our humanity is a beautiful thing that can be shared during cinema. And my goal would be to keep doing that thing while making movies.
Well, on that note, that warning about cinematic roughage, I guess we should end this. I'm so glad to have a chance to talk to you guys. This is really great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mitchell. Elvis. It was a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you guys so much. Take care.
Thank you. Ciao.